This is the Wannabe Saints podcast, where we take virtues and try to break them down so they become tangible and applicable to your life.
We aren't here to bring you advice, we're here to bring you virtue. I'm Jordyn.
And I'm Rachel.
We're your hosts,
and this is Wannabe Saints.
Start prayer?
Yep, let's do it. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we pray and ask that you be the fourth person in this conversation tonight, that you would just send the Holy Spirit over Jordyn and I and Nichole as she shares her story, guide her thoughts and her words to help spread your glory and to evangelize people and to just build your kingdom up, Lord. We pray and ask that you be present with us as we say, Our Father,
who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Wannabe Saints. Today we have on a guest, Nichole Pullano. Did I say that last name right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Yes, we met her. We were introduced to her at Seek. And
yeah, we're just excited to hear her story. Jordyn and I don't know her story very well, but, you know, we've been told that it's a pretty incredible story. So we're super excited to get to hear it and share it with the world. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So why don't you just tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so like they said, my name's Nichole. I'm from upstate New York originally, but I currently live in Columbus, Ohio, and I serve with the Amazing Nation. We're a ministry that is located in Columbus, Ohio, and upstate New York. And yeah, we go across the nation and we put on events and we serve the youth and athletes as well. And we spread the message that you're amazing for who you are as children of God, not for what you do. So yeah, I serve the ministry and travel with a bunch of missionaries.
Awesome.
That's so cool.
And how long have you been in the ministry for?
So the ministry's been part of my life and my family for like 8 years now. There's actually 4 of us that, you know, work for it or serve in some way, but I've officially been in a role as staff with the ministry for only a year now.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad worked with the ministry as well for a long time. So like my first job was actually doing the marketing for Hard as Nails at the time. So
yes.
Yeah. So we were supposed to have Justin on back in March,
I think. Yeah.
And then unfortunately it didn't work out. But so you beat him, but we'll have him on later.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, you should definitely have him on. He's great.
Yeah.
Good old Justin.
Oh yeah. So. Well, sweet. So before we dive into Nichole's story, I had asked her prior to this episode, what are 2 virtues that encompass her story? And she said humility and patience. And so before we get into all the nitty gritty and just so that people can, you know, visualize like maybe where humility is coming at or patience or, you know, how you've been brought to those virtues. Now I'll explain humility and then Jordyn's going to explain patience. So humility is a virtue that we've covered before. Humility is, you know, recognizing who you are or knowing who you are in the eyes of God, right? It's knowing your gifts, it's knowing your talents, it's also knowing your faults and your weaknesses. It really just kind of like brings you back into reality of who you are and being okay with making mistakes, being okay with, you know, having flaws or, you know, yeah. So that's kind of like what humility is. And then patience.
And then patience, it's not only just about the waiting, it's about how you suffer and endure things. And it's not really about like removing pain or like numbing pain, but it's about how you suffer with the pain and how you handle it. And yeah, I guess kind of get through it rather than ignoring it. I would say,
like
right?
enduring.
Yeah, enduring.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing that I forgot to mention about humility is just that humility is also then being able to build God's kingdom and share your gifts and your talents and share your story, which is exactly what you're doing here. So thank you. Well, I guess let's just go for it and let's start at the beginning. So, you know, what was your childhood like and like how many siblings you have and all that?
Yeah, it's actually a huge part of my story and kind of what got me here and got me to the mission is, everything that my family has been through. So, yeah, I grew up in upstate New York. Like I said, I have a Roman Catholic family. I'm the second oldest of 10 kids. So, yeah, growing up, there was just, we were big on family vacations. But when I was, oh, let's see, maybe about 12 years old, my little brother got diagnosed with a brain tumor when he was sick for 8 months, very, very sick. It was like one of the rarest in the world. So, yeah, at a young age, I kind of had to see my parents go through that and, watching a sibling die and not really knowing how to interpret that at that age, was really what kind of started, my journey into darkness and then back into light eventually. So, yeah, we lost Michael, was his name, in 2008. And that was really hard on my parents, obviously. But then about 5 years later, my older sister, her name was Anna, she was in a car accident. So she also passed away. That was in 2013. She was 18 years old and I was 17 years old. So yeah, so right from the get-go, I kind of had to grow up really quickly and yeah, just, I became the oldest sibling overnight and took on that role of like having to be there for my other siblings and love them even though I was suffering. But yeah, from there it really sparked a lot of darkness for me. I turned away from the faith, but my family was big on the sacraments. They went to church every Sunday. We've always been a very Catholic family. So when my sister died, I completely took it out on God. That was like my other half. She was like my best friend. And I got really mad, like you took my brother and now you take my sister. Why would you do that if you love me? That was my way of thinking. And again, I was in high school at the time. So yeah, after that, to kind of just go right into my testimony, if that's okay. Or yeah, I was about to enter into college. And so it was a really, really big loss on the community. It was all over the news. It was in the papers. It was just a really big thing. My social media was going insane. I was receiving all of these messages and flowers and lasagnas. And there was just, endless people at our house. And we had already built like this wide network from when my brother was sick, So a lot of families were like, oh my gosh, another one. How can that happen? So it hit us really, really hard. Losing one sibling is bad enough, but losing two is just like, like my heart was just completely shattered. So I just started partying. I started drinking from the day she died. I started drinking. I was only 17. And I just kept drinking. And then, when you enter into college, university, it's really easy to find an environment that's going to promote like activities like that. And so then drinking turned into, pill popping and party drugs and before I knew it, that was what I was doing all the time. And that was how I was functioning. And so the escape started, when my brother died, but it got worse when my sister died. And I just kept trying to escape. But I had this just like deep anger and resentment towards God and towards my life and just felt it was just really unfair that I had to go through that. Why do I have to suffer, And so for 10 years that went on. I lost myself in drugs and alcohol and eventually I was sleeping around and then I was distracting myself with academics and like I was majoring in everything and I was like pre-dental, pre-med, pre-pharmacy and I wouldn't sleep and I wouldn't eat and it was just any way that I could escape what I truly felt deep down inside, which was brokenness. I was doing that for 10 years and it got worse and worse and worse. I started really struggling with depression, anxiety, the drugs weren't working anymore. All of a sudden I couldn't get through a day without a White Claw in my hand or, pills to pop. And it caught up with me and it hit me that, I was in my mid-20s. Time was just going by and my life was going nowhere. I couldn't handle things anymore. And looking back, there were very clear moments where, my mom had been praying for me all these years since my sister had passed. She started praying a rosary every day. And so looking back, there were a lot of clear moments that, I can see now that Mary was gently guiding me, to come back into the faith and to pray again. But I was very resistant to it. So yeah, with some time and kind of my life falling apart, I got into some trouble. I had an attorney defending me, and I was in all this, financial chaos, and like was quitting jobs left and right, and couldn't make decisions, couldn't hold down, I was back in my parents' house and didn't have a bedroom here, and my life was just kind of in shambles. And so my mom got me to confession. And after that, I formed this trust with my priest. And so I would go to him every week and I would confess the same things because I was still on all these drugs and, engaging in the same behaviors. So my confession was the same every week. But, Jesus said, "Come as you are." So I was like, well, okay, what do I do? Like I'm surrounded by, like, my friends now are all drug addicts. All we do is exchange pills. But like I can tell that I'm broken and I'm going nowhere in life right now. And I don't want that anymore. I feel like I there's purpose to my life and I just don't know what it is. And so he kept suggesting that I go somewhere and get help. And again, I wasn't about it. I was like, no, I can handle this on my own. What are you talking about? And so, right. Yeah. And I couldn't handle it on my own. So after kind of months of, going back and forth with that, I surrendered. I said, okay, you're right. I keep getting sober and relapsing, and, there's still no movement. And clearly there's, by this time my priest had kind of instilled, like the litany of trust he showed me, or like the Samaritan woman, how you can't quench your thirst with what you keep doing. And those kinds of like Bible verses and stories and whatnot, and prayers like stuck with me and sat with me. So God was speaking to me, My mom continued to pray for me quietly. So I said, fine, I'll go get help. So my mom helped me find this community down in Florida. It's called Cenacolo. It means the upper room. And it's really for struggling young adults. So there were girls there with eating disorders. There were drug addicts, girls who struggle with depression, anxiety. But it's really just like a time of ultimate healing and formation. So I spent a year and a half in that community. We would pray 3 rosaries a day. We wore long skirts. One person would cook all the meals, and, we didn't talk about the food. You just ate it. You relied completely on providence. We did a holy hour every day. We did fasting Fridays. Yeah, we would read the gospel every day, and we would promote conversation about the gospel. So it was really, really hard.
That's
Very,
like
very,
intense and
Yeah.
very like
yeah.
drastically different. Drastically different.
Yes. But I was desperate, and it
Mhm.
was such a radical 180 to come from like friends who just, are buying booze and nicotine and whatever every day, doing whatever we want, but like going nowhere in life, to being kind of controlled in a sense. You really have to die to yourself a lot in that community, but it serves a purpose, because drug addicts, they don't want to, we want what we want, I mean, I don't define myself as a drug addict anymore, but when you're stuck in that addicted mentality, you want what you want instantly, and you don't want to be told what to do. So in order to break that is to go to the absolute other extreme. So it was so difficult, but it worked, and I had to give up my phone and no contact with family. And so that was all
That's really
criteria of the
hard.
community. Yeah, it was so hard.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but, a lot of people do come out of it with changed lives.
Right.
So, and it's helped thousands and thousands of young adults.
How long were you there for?
A year and a half. They recommend a minimum of 3 years, but again, a lot of people go there and they have poor home lives. Maybe they don't have parents that are praying for them, or maybe their parents were the reason they ended up in the community in the first place. So yeah, after a year and a half, I decided to come home, and my mom had been working in the mission at Hard as Nails for 8 years as the finance manager. And so I had known our founder, Justin Fatika, all this time. And when I was deep in my addictions and my secular life, I did not like Justin Fatika because, he radiated Jesus and the gospel. And so when I came home and he just had all this like love and forgiveness for me. He was like happy for me that I went and healed, and he was like, "I see Jesus in you. Do you want to work for me?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I guess I do now, But so that's how I ended up in the mission. But, you know, going back to the community, what really, like, my healing really took place there in adoration. You know, we had to spend an hour every day in front of the Eucharist. And I remember my first like couple of months there because I was so mad still. You know, I sat there with the Eucharist
I just have a quick
exposed
question.
and
Did you
yeah.
like send yourself there like with your like did your mom like be like you have to go, or was it kind of like you need help, like I think you should go, you're like yeah, I'm going nowhere, so okay.
Yeah, it definitely was like my decision at the end of the
Okay.
day. I don't think anyone was gonna force me to do anything, but it was clear that I was like desperate and desiring help and like something more, you know, and we went and visited before I decided to fully enter.
Okay.
And then to me it was appealing that they like made you have a work day and they controlled your meals and they like kind of built a day for you that you had to follow, because with all of the substances I was on, withdrawing from them was like a huge reason why I didn't come off them, because
Right.
in the past when I had tried, I would end up like in bed for weeks at a time and like not doing
Right.
anything.
So like being forced into structure, it's like kind of distracts you
Yeah.
from the withdrawal in a sense.
Yeah, it like breaks down the, you know, the withdrawal and then like builds up a structure for you so you're able to work without, you know, without substances
You're
altering
basically
you. But
building the better habit while getting rid of the vice. Even though it's not easy, it's like there's a forced habit that's being built. Yeah.
Yes.
That
And
makes
like
sense.
there was something really appealing to me about the prayer aspect of it, you know. And I didn't know why at the time either. It was very much, I don't know, it was God pulling me, you know. So yeah, I mean, in the end I get it now, but it was like it was so confusing because I was so mad at him still.
Right.
But yeah, again, through like spending time in front of him in that community, I just, I don't know, he gave me so many graces and like he allowed me to see that like all this time I've been mad at him and pushing him away and choosing all of this worldly stuff. Like he's been with me the whole time. He's been with me in every decision I made and he hasn't stopped loving me. And he wants me to have healing. He wants me to have a healthy life. He wants me to find true joy, you know? And so just being able to kind of heal my relationship with him was really where like my reversion happened, you know. And then I was like, okay, wow, I understand. You know, I've you can take the hate out of my heart, you know. I don't need it anymore. You know, he loves me and he wants to help me pick up this cross and carry it and continue on. So yeah, it was really through that forced adoration that, but again, it was kind of funny. The first few weeks I was like so visibly mad. I was like turned away from the Eucharist and I was like in my head, I'm like going at him. I'm like, no, 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 you did this, this, and this. And like now I can't even have my drugs. So what is this place? You know? And he's so gentle and he understands me and every corner of my heart. And so, you know, he just took it. He took it like God, you know? So
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely like a lot of healing through that community. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was quite a journey, but you know, I'm really, really thankful for Justin Fatika and the ministry and the missionaries because they were like, you know, again, I didn't like them before I went to Cenacolo because they radiated light in Jesus and
Right.
I was,
So-
you know, living in the devil's world.
Right. So prior to going and like being around the
Yeah.
ministry, like how often were you around them that you were just like wall up, like leave me alone?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I'm like a people pleaser. So my mom worked for the ministry, right? So we would have them over for host meals all the time. And she also, my mom's smart, so she sees us struggling and she's like, missionaries, come on, I got people for you to serve. So they were over quite often. And yeah, sometimes I would hide in my room and they were just so, they loved me anyways. And they always like, and they invested in me. They kept praying. I was on a lot of their prayer lists for years. And we had a going away party after I decided to go to Cenacolo. And the people that attended were all of the missionaries. It was everybody from Hard as Nails. It was like no matter like how much I rejected them or was just like a bad friend or you know what I
Right.
mean? They like wanted this for me and they could see past my suffering and my struggles and they could see like who I truly am as God's daughter.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, I'm forever grateful. They're the people that definitely have stuck with me through this whole journey. So yeah, and coming out of the community, it's been such a blessing to have that, and to just, to have Justin's forgiveness for, ways I acted or who I was. And yeah, just seeing him believe in me all these years is definitely, it's a gift for sure. So how could I not serve?
Right. So when they were at your going away party, what was your reaction? Was it kind of like, like you guys, or were you kind of like, huh, like you're coming to say goodbye to me? What was that like?
At the party itself, I was so out of it because, to be honest, like, we had it literally the night before I left and I still wasn't sober.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like drinking at this party. Yeah. So I was very much like, woo, I'm going, whatever. But it hit me in the community when I was there, because after like 6 months, you get to write to people. And I also had read one of Justin's books while I was there, the You're Amazing book. And so it just hit me that, like, wow, those were the people that came and like supported me. And a couple of them had written to me and like were checking in on me. And then I had a couple other friends who were kind of part of that drug circle that had written to me in the community. And I was like, I didn't know you guys even knew I left, really. You know what I mean? So it's just, yeah, it was nice to see. I mean, it was obviously really nice to be cared about by them, but to just see the people that have showed up consistently over the years. Yeah.
Yeah. So going back a little bit, if you're willing to share,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, like needing help in like what did you say, a lawyer or like that kind of, can we know like what was going on during that?
Yeah. So how do I articulate this well? Let's see. So in my years of like kind of doing a lot of drugs, I had moments where I really struggled mentally. In fact, I would argue that I've dipped into like some moments of psychosis, or just like the things I was thinking or saying really weren't right. I mean, I know now there was a lot of influence from the devil. I had dipped into like tarot card reading, crystal healing, Reiki healing, and like the occult. And so
Trying to find something bigger anywhere else.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, exactly.
Jeez.
Exactly. And when you open up your spirit to those kinds of things, it's like, it's wild how it changes how you think. But then combine it with, all these substances I'm taking, and now I'm like, I can't like connect the dots the right way. So I had gotten into there was like a confusing situation with one of my old coaches at my high school. And then fast forward, by like some random chance, I ended up at the school and was, not well and looked visibly not well. And so they took that the wrong way. And so then they ended up like sending police to my house, and I got banned from my high school. And, my attorney had to defend me and say like, no, it was a big misunderstanding. I had showed up that day. It was my sister's birthday, my sister who passed. And I didn't look well because it was my sister's birthday and I wasn't doing well.
Right.
But like that coach had happened to be there. And so they thought the two things were connected with that confusing situation I had mentioned. Again, the confusion had come from like my inability to process properly at the time.
Yeah.
Because I had been suppressing all of this trauma for years. And so I wasn't able to make logical sense of like certain things that were starting to build up and overflow. And so it came out at her. She was someone that really supported me along the way back when kind of it first happened, when my sister first died. So it was just like an emotional upheaval that was like not well handled by me, but I wasn't well. So it just led to, luckily I didn't end up with like DUIs or anything like that. But yeah, so it just definitely rocked I'm a good girl. I've always been a good student. I followed the rules. You know what I mean? I was always teacher's pet. And so having cops at your door when you're like, I don't know, dancing with the fairies in your mind and being told like you're going to get arrested if you set foot on our. No, but literally. I believed in fairies. I really thought they were real.
Oh, for a whole while. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a walking miracle in many, many ways. I mean, if God
That's
can
incredible,
take,
honestly.
yeah, right, to unwind this psychosis and bring me back to sane grounds, it's really through praying the rosary, I think, that, I was able to rewrite a lot of those thoughts that didn't make any sense. And it's like a subconscious, prayer does that. So
Right.
it's a miracle, but yeah, I think I'm probably still banned from that school to this day. So I'm not allowed to go. All my siblings, they play sports. So if they have any games against them, it doesn't matter where they are, I'm not allowed to attend any
unfortunate.
function.
Yeah.
So how many siblings do you have?
So there's 8 of us surviving.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
The
wanna go
youngest
back-
is 9.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So are you the second oldest then?
Yes.
Okay.
And then how far apart in age were you from your brother that had passed?
So he was born in 2004 and I was born in 96. So we were 12 years apart.
Okay. So he was like an infant when he passed.
Yeah, he was 4. He was 4
Okay.
years old.
Yeah, that's young.
Yeah, little
Wow.
toddler.
That is
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, that's intense.
I was gonna ask, like, when your like sister had passed, or like I guess when your little brother had passed, obviously you said your big sister, obviously big sister role, she probably took on a lot of like emotions for all of you guys. After she had passed, did you ever find yourself like thinking of ways that she helped you guys that you picked up to help your younger siblings with?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, just like she had this like life about her, and I know I obviously knew her really well and personally we were very close. So she had a lot of her own issues as a lot of girls do in high school, but she had a life about her that was like, why do we care so much? Why do we care so much about what other people think? And she was very like adventurous, spontaneous, and just like full of joy. She wanted to laugh and like have a good time and like kind of be ridiculous. She was definitely like the biggest goofball in the family. And so I think like in the years following that, I really just, that switch kind of turned on for me of like, why do I care so much? Her quote was live a little. So we all have like t-shirts that say live a little. And sometimes, we'll be like, hey, you're being really stuck up, whatever, you need to live a little. So it's definitely,
That's awesome.
that lives on in our family for sure. Yeah, I always admired that about her, and I see it come out now for myself. So yeah, and I think it brings a lightheartedness to the family. When you've been through a lot of tragedy, it's easy to feel heavy and weighed down all the time, and because life still goes on and things are still really stressful, but like there is so much beauty still, and we can enjoy God's creation. So yeah, I would definitely say like her joy and her life is what we've carried on for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
When you were talking about, I had another question to go back to, but it's escaped me. So when it comes back, I'll ask you it. So for now,
I guess one question that I have about the Cenacolo is like, so obviously they had like structure for you guys to follow, but like, I guess maybe on like your like really bad days when you're struggling and like don't want to follow through, like what was like the discipline actions like there? Like what,
that's a
like
good question.
how did that?
That's a great question. That was like probably the biggest part of the formation because yeah, naturally you're there and at first you're withdrawing, you're away from your family. You don't know how long you're going to be there. So for me, like I was miserable. I didn't want to do this, you know what I mean? And I was uncomfortable. Like my body was just uncomfortable withdrawing. And so yeah, I had a lot of like, like lash out or throw crying fits and just like act really immaturely, but that's where I was at. That's like emotionally speaking, that's where I was at. And so they had a lot of practices in place that kind of help you start growing up when you're going through things like that to deal with it better. It really teaches you how to suffer well. So we would speak truth to each other. We would give each other helps, they're called. And so, it teaches you confidence and like in sticking up for the right thing and being able to approach someone maturely and say like, hey, I'm noticing this about you. But in those moments where, I was like freaking out or whatever, the girls would try and see me first. They would try to come to the level I was at and then try to help me. And yeah, whenever you're given help in community, usually you get prideful or angry or something. You don't want to be told what to do or what's wrong with you. You know what I mean? And so the other practice in place would be to then the person receiving the help is supposed to take a look at what shifted inside when that person was telling you what to do, and you go pray about it. And 3 days later, you come back and you share with that person what that shift was. And so I found so much healing in that, because it showed me that, like, wow, my reactions to things are actually just like my own wounds, you know? Like you telling me that I didn't do this work well made me feel like you think I'm stupid, or like I'm inadequate, and I see that that's like something that I taught myself years and years ago.
Hmm.
And so by praying about it, and again, like, this is all, you do this whole journey with God, and the Holy Spirit really moves. So it's definitely something you fine tune as you stay there, but it teaches you to control your reactions to things. So, because, you go out and you work a job and you're going to get feedback from your boss, especially, the older you get or the more intense your job is, you're going to be told what to do. You're going to get feedback from your boss, and sometimes you might not like it. And so just developing that maturity and not running to drugs in those moments was a huge part of like the formation for me, and I know for like a lot of the other girls, like the ones that struggled with eating disorders, it was like their way of dealing with things was to not eat, but like we had to show up for meals and you had to clear your plate. And so it was like they had certain things in place to kind of cater to those kinds of issues that over time you start getting better and better at receiving help and like taking it. And you're supposed to stay in silence when you're receiving help. I was terrible at that. Everything people said to me, when they would give me helps, I'd be like, yeah, but actually, and then I'd go off on my own. They'd be like, nope, stay in silence, stay in silence. And it teaches you to just hold it. Just hold it. I don't have
anything you say right now is invalid, so keep listening.
Yeah.
Be quiet.
But they were
That's
were right, but I wasn't hearing it.
Well,
Right.
and that's like such a lesson in humility, honestly. Dang, that's intense.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm wondering, like, okay, how did it work leaving? Did you get to decide like I'm ready to go, or like how did that play out? Because I could imagine that there could be people who show up and think this is ridiculous, I'm not doing this, right? And just like want to leave.
Yeah, it's different for everyone. I definitely was hitting a point where I felt like I wasn't growing, and I had hit a point in my sobriety where I was like, okay, I am strong enough to stay sober, but I need to be out in the world now doing this. I need to be with my family. And they don't typically recommend leaving before 3 years. So anyone that tries to leave before 3 years, they're gonna want you to really pray about it and discern it well. And so that was a moment that I definitely lacked patience. I will say that I didn't have like the cleanest leave from there, but in my decision, I prayed the whole time, like, okay, God, this is what I'm deciding to do. I need you to work with it. And so I think like he heard that and he was with me the whole time. And, it was such a beautiful thing that I could roll into the mission, because you still have this community. You still have a structured prayer life. You have people holding you accountable.
Right. You have
You're
such
surrounded
a good place
by
to go back to. It's not like you're going back to like
Yes.
a broken home with a neighborhood full of
Yes.
druggies. You're going home to a
Exactly.
faithful family and
Yes.
ministry.
Yes. And that's the biggest difference, because they have seen a lot of people like leave the community early, if you will, and just go right back into their old lives. So it's different for everyone. It's definitely a different journey. Again, I'm acknowledging that I definitely lacked patience in making that decision, but I don't regret it. If I hadn't rolled into this mission, I might be saying something different. But again, I was open to God's plan out here. I was ready to move on to the next thing, acknowledging that I still need growth and formation. I'm a human, but Cenacolo definitely gave me a lot. Yeah, it's never ending. That's for sure.
Yeah. So the question I had earlier was going back to when you lost your sister, you mentioned being there for your younger siblings and kind of taking that on. So how did that kind of look for you with like, did you hide from them all of the pain that you were feeling, and it was like they didn't know how much you were suffering, or what did that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's part of my personality to also feel like I have to lead. It's just something that I naturally do. So Yeah, I think for me it was more of like, yeah, I felt like I had to be responsible or like to like be the oldest sibling, to have all the answers for them. And so I didn't necessarily hide my pain. I don't think I could, you know. It was very obvious to everyone that like this was something that was going to be really hard for me specifically. You know, growing up, it was always Anna and Nichole, Anna and Nichole. We did everything together. We had matching outfits. You know, if you invited one of us to your birthday party, you invited the other. A lot of people thought we were twins. So that aspect of it wasn't like a secret, but and it's crazy because it's almost like I had this double life going on because I was out partying and not truly dealing with it. But then I would come home and be like the big sister. And so yeah, I didn't really let them see into that side of things, you know, and not until way later in college when they all started kind of growing up and they had all, you know, every one of my siblings has gone through like their own healing with this because it affected each of us differently. So after some years, I definitely let go of the reins a bit more and more. And then, you know, I think my parents had more of like a Catholic influence on them as we've grown up. And so it placed out eventually, but yeah, in those initial years, it was really like, I don't know. I was always honoring her, talking about her and keeping her alive, but was definitely like trying to hold it together and be responsible and just like be the sister that they could look up to or that, you know, was going to survive out here. And despite the fact that that happened to me, I'm going to make something of my life, you know? So I really lost myself in academics because I was like, no, I'm gonna become a doctor, you know. That broke my heart, but I'm gonna make a life. So it was all an escape, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was a challenging transition for sure.
For sure. So how did
Yeah.
that like transition then? So then once you're into like college and you're really getting into like the partying and the drugs and whatever, I guess like two questions. One is what was the lowest point that you really felt? And then also when was it that your family was like, "Oh my gosh, like she needs our help," or that like started to affect your relationship with your family?
So I had made it through college. I graduated with a bachelor's in biochemistry and I had eventually decided on dental school. And so I made it into dental school in Philly. I was alone in Philly and COVID hit and I was isolated and was really heavy into like marijuana and it was still on, you know, stimulants, drinking every day, you know, the nicotine, all of that jazz. And so there wasn't so much partying anymore. It was like just straight survival. And that's when I got really into like again the tarot cards and that was when the psychosis I think started really kicking in. It was a combination of things, you know, suppressed trauma, the occult and the devil, and then isolation from COVID was like the perfect recipe. And so I had started just really yeah, just saying things that were really out there. Like I really believed in fairies. I'm not kidding. Like I really thought I was like it's funny. I laugh about it now. I
Yeah.
really do. And I would, you know, I'd go outside and I would talk to the plants and they would talk back. And that was my real
That's
no,
crazy.
it's funny we laugh about it now because I'm so beyond that now, which is a huge miracle, but that was
Right.
real for me at the time. And so
Like,
my family started go ahead.
I no, I just have such a good question about that because it's like, is that like the psychedelics messing with your mind, or do you think it's like the devil like talking back to you through the plants? Like, how did like looking back, like how do you like actually view as that?
I think it really was the devil, but I was so numbed on marijuana. Like I was
Yeah.
smoking an insane amount of marijuana, but I wasn't doing so much psychedelics at the time. It was
Mm-hmm.
more like study drugs, a lot of stimulants, but then mixing with the marijuana so you're on like competing drugs and then drinking all day, you know. So, yeah, a lot of the psychedelics and other big party drugs that was a lot through my undergrad, but in dental school again it was like I had to just live in these four walls, like within like one little tiny studio apartment all day long doing my work. And you couldn't go anywhere. And I was a dental student. So, you know, that was one of the essential jobs, right? And so we,
Yeah.
you know, if we went anywhere, we had to like report it. So I was very confined. So I was just trying to numb everything. And
Mm-hmm.
so through that, it like numbs your logic. You know, when
Right.
you're that like doped up, it's totally numbing your logic. But I would definitely say it was all the things I was doing with the occult that really allowed the devil into those kinds of thoughts. You know, modern spirituality is a really dark and dangerous thing, and you don't even know what you're getting into. You know, I was doing all these, like, I was meditating with my chakras and, like, you know, getting into some other religious practices that were just really spiritually dangerous. So
Wow.
it was a lot of, there's so much deception going on.
Right. Did you have to do
yeah.
renouncing prayers?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, kind of back to your question, you know, that was when I was like, my family started really questioning, like, what is going on with this girl. And so I had decided that, you know, I didn't think it would be ethical to continue on with dental school at the time because I couldn't get myself sober. So I came home and my mom was like, all right, so we're going to go back to your therapist, right? And my therapist she's Catholic. She's a healer. Like, I swear, she's like a miracle worker. And she just noticed right away. She was like, you know, because I walk in there, I'm like, no, you don't understand, Lisa. Like, I'm gifted. I'm like super gifted. I've got all these, like, I can talk to like the spirit of anything. I got these like fairies going on. I got like magical powers. I can talk to the dead, you know, all this stuff. And she was like, yeah, there's a lot of deception going on right here. And it took me a while to like accept that and like come around to it. So it wasn't like the first session we were doing deliverance prayers, but eventually I agreed to it. And yeah, there were like straight up like the shift in my brain when we would do those deliverance prayers. And they were specific. Like, I would renounce very like specifically what I had been doing for that year. Yeah, and eventually I prayed, there's like this 40-page deliverance prayer specifically from, I had done what's called a Kundalini meditation. And that kind of goes along with the chakra healing and it like opens up this life force energy in your spine. There's so much that's to it, but it was like circling social media to just do. So I was like, yeah, why not? Woohoo. So I did it, and that was like kind of what started all of that. And so I did this like 40-page deliverance prayer from Kundalini, it's called, and it like unbinds like every part of your spirit from whatever, you know, that meditation attaches you to. So yeah, that's a super powerful thing. I really don't recommend to anyone. If you ever come across Kundalini, like, do your research, please.
Yeah.
Don't just do it.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, very intense.
Yeah,
Just for people who
absolutely.
maybe don't know, can you explain what like psychosis is?
Yeah, so it's kind of like when you're not in a logical state of thinking. So, I mean, there's people who it can have so many different, it looks very different on a lot of people. And there's like a range of intensity, I would say, with psychosis. So, some people can like be thinking that things are happening that aren't, or like for me, I was like talking to things that I thought existed and they didn't. And so there was like a little bit of like, you know, like kind of letting the imagination run wild and thinking it's real. So it's really like when you're out of touch with reality in some sort of way, I would say. I'm no doctor though, so don't quote me. ChatGPT might have a good
lot of
definition
for that
but-
stuff, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there was definitely a little bit of that going on. And the paranoia was insane. But I was like so convinced that I was in tune with all of these spirits, right? So like everything I was saying was right. So yeah,
That's wild. Wow.
it was so wild. I can't even explain to you what it's like to now be outside of that. But
I mean,
you know,
that's just
everything that happened.
incredible that God brought
Yeah.
you out of all of this.
I know. I don't understand it, to be honest. I don't know how that happened because it was so real when I was going through it. That was so real for me, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a miracle healing. And it really was through like being forced to pray that you rewire those thoughts, you know?
Yeah. And I guess like, okay, my personal opinion, like I worked at the hospital for like a year or so when I lived in Pittsburgh. And I had a lot of like, I have a lot of weird stories from that time working there.
Yeah.
I sat with a lot of like suicidal patients, like mental health patients is really who I like worked with. And every time I'd go into like the hospital room to go be with somebody, the person before me would be like, give me a report, right? They're like, oh, they're so easy, like nonchalant, don't even worry about it. And I'd walk in there and it would be like, whether somebody was depressed, suicidal, like bulimic, anorexic, like all these things, right? Like whatever, like a lot of mental health disorders. I'd go in there and all of a sudden they would be like attacking me without me even saying like I'm Catholic, right? They would like, I had a
Yeah.
Saint Benedict bracelet and like all, like a lot of weird spiritual things would happen. And I was just like kind of mind blown by it. And I kind of got the opinion that like a lot of these mental health disorders is a lack of prayer life. And I'm not saying that these things don't exist, because they do exist. People struggle with depression. Like I know people that genuinely do and have a good prayer life. Like they exist. But I do think that like prayer is so important to overcome these things and or to like defeat these things, because it's such an increase in like mental health disorders and stuff. Like what's lacking in people's life is God, and that's just facts, because the world was not so depressed and anxious however many years ago. And so, you know, one of my favorite psychologists to listen to is Dr. Matthew Bruninger, and he was on Matt Fradd, and he was my professor in college, and he talks about how he's like, when I prescribe people medications, I give them, like, he says, a whisper of like what most psychiatrists will give, because the first things that people need to do is exercise and have a prayer life. So I just find it kind of fascinating and cool that was like the adoration and the prayer that was like, this is where my healing came from and this is what I needed.
Yes, you're so on point. I feel really, really strongly about, you know, like I think modern medicine has started to really pay attention to the mind and body connections. You know, we've looked at how, like, you know, going through trauma can manifest itself physically. People who haven't undealt with trauma, you know, harbor more toxins in their lymphatic system, right? And it can present itself as autoimmune diseases. There's books about it. You know, the body keeps the score. But I think the direction we're really heading in nowadays is mind, body, and spirit. We need to have a spiritual life. And so people who aren't paying attention to their spirit, their mind and their body are affected by those things. And the root of it is spiritual. You know, I'm not surprised that when you would walk into the rooms with those patients that you would, you know, feel the attack, because it is a spiritual battle. But for people who don't have a spiritual life or a prayer life, and they're not in tune with those things, to them, there's just something that's manifested physically, right? It's just present to them in this world, in this physical life, and they have to figure out how to deal with it. And so I think like one of the key points in healing for people is, like you said, starting a prayer life. You know, it's not a coincidence that going to Cenacolo and like kind of forcing a prayer structure and opening that up for myself is what brought me the ultimate healing. It's not a coincidence at all. You know, I would exercise. I had a therapist for years, but I was missing God. I was missing a prayer life. And that's where the true, you know, you heal from the inside out. And then your body feels it. So
right. Well, it's even beautiful. Like, you know, St. Carlo has his quote about when you go before the Eucharist, it's like, you know, the actual sun gives you a tan, and like sitting before the Lord, before the actual sun is, I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's like that, like transforming your soul, right? That's transforming your soul. And like, I think I've shared this before, but the word adoration, I was sitting in adoration one day and I just had this like mini revelation for myself of adoring means deep love, profound love. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, Lord, I'm incapable of deep and profound love. Like you are. And you are deeply loving me and profoundly loving me while I sit here and I cry to you all my woes and poor me's. I leave changed. I don't change God. He changes me. And like, that's the adoration. He's adoring me. I like, yes, I'm there for him, and like, yes, we adore him, but like truly he's adoring me, and I leave changed because I don't change God. He is.
yes. Wow. I love that. I love the way you just worded that. It's so powerful to be in the presence of the Eucharist. And it's like, I don't even know how to articulate why that is. You know, I don't know if I've ever even heard it articulated well. You just have to go do it and experience it and start developing that relationship with him. And then you can feel it for yourself. It's like being in his presence. There's nothing like it. You can't help but be healed, you know?
Right. So. You can't. Yeah. He's the best friend waiting to just like help. It's Yeah.
It was a huge, huge part of my healing. But again, for me, it had to be forced. I was not choosing that, you know? So that's why that something, you know, God knew that community was going to be the the turning point for me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you go back and explain a little bit about when kind of like your mom helped you find this place and like how did that all kind of go down like in time with like going to therapy to like when you actually left for Cenacolo?
Yeah, so again, like my therapist kind of having that influence of like deliverance prayers and, kind of speaking into what was going on with me. And then me seeing the deliverance prayers actually shift things, that made things pretty real for me. And then like the situation with, my high school and my coach and the police and the attorney, that also really snapped me out of this like, I don't know, fantasy world I was in. And I was like, oh, wow, this is my life and things I do really matter. And like, I'm stuck in my own world. And so that kind of snapped me out of it. And so, yeah, I guess so that kind of all started that journey when I was home. But what brought me to Cenacolo was somebody in the mission. Someone who, her name's Angela. She worked closely with Justin Fatica. I think she was his assistant for a while. And she was one of the missionaries that constantly invested in me and spent a lot of time with me and walked with me. But her brother had gone through Cenacolo. So her and her mom had brought it up to me when they noticed I was struggling. So, kind of through seeing that with my therapist and then having some things kind of blow up in my life, I started to kind of come around to the idea. So, I mean, that seed was planted before my priest had started suggesting like a rehab of some sort. So it was on my mind. And when I came home the day that my priest had, my priest and I had a good conversation, I was like, okay, fine, maybe it is time to go away somewhere. I told that to my mom and she goes, Cenacolo, we got to go to Cenacolo. Because she had remembered Angela suggesting it. And so I was like, fine. I'm like, I don't even want to put the effort into finding a place. And Cenacolo is free. You don't pay for it. So
it's actually really funny.
Didn't we talk about this
I just
with,
registered this.
Yeah, as soon as you said Cenacolo, didn't we talk about it with Bobby?
No. Oh, we had a priest on, Father Kevin Menard. He's from St. John Cantius in Chicago. And we were talking about Medjugorje.
That's what it was.
Okay. And and it's there. And so when I was little, I went to Medjugorje and I got to go to the place and hear some testimonies. But I was like, why does this sound so familiar?
Yeah,
and literally
like,
2 weeks ago.
Just talked about Cenacolo.
Yeah. So this is the second episode in a row that we're talking about it, which is so interesting because we had Bobby.
Yeah. So Bobby was like, he was a drug addict on heroin. And then we had Father Kevin.
Yeah.
And we talked about Cenacolo. And now you're talking about it. I'm like, oh man, people must be needing this stuff.
This message. So we should link it because we did not link it.
No, we should totally link it.
Yeah. So anyways, that just like occurred to me. It was like, oh my gosh, look at the
You must have a
here.
listener.
Yeah.
You have a listener that needs it. That needs
totally.
Cenacolo.
Yeah. So anyways,
I
said it's free.
Yeah, you know who you are. It's free. Like that's
know
incredible.
Who you are.
Or maybe somebody knows somebody, but I will totally link it because I had to look it up on my phone. I was like, man, why is that the same place we
You said it was in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And and I knew that they had a location in Florida, but the one in Bosnia is the one I got to go hear testimonies at. So
yeah, that's one of their main ones. One day maybe I'll go there, but there's men's houses as well in Alabama and Florida. So
wow.
Okay.
That's incredible. Yeah. Wow.
So cool. Are you still friends with like any of the girls that were there at the same time as you? Or
yeah, I talked to a couple of them.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. Some of them, it's hard because when you leave, the girls that are still there don't have
no
cell phones.
contact. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really a matter of kind of waiting for them to get out. But there is a couple of girls that were out by the time I came out. And so, yeah, we talk every so often. A couple of them had like heard of Justin Fatica too. And so they were like, I'm so excited you're working for him. Like, he's awesome. I'm like, no, he's amazing.
Yeah. Yes, he's amazing. So what was it like coming back? And I would assume, which maybe I shouldn't assume, but I would assume that there was some hurt that maybe was caused between like your relationships with siblings or parents or whatever. So what was that like coming back and like what did that look like or the work that it took or,
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Thank you for asking. That was a crazy transition, especially, there's a reason why they want you to stay like about 3 years, right? Is because when you step back into the old space that you really broke in, even if you have a loving and supportive family, there are all these associations you make with that space. And so I came home and I was very just prayerful and trusting for a bit. But, and I eased into like talking to my old friends and, I just started kind of slowly with some family members. But yeah, there have been a lot of apologies that had to happen, just certain times I wasn't a good example or certain fights I caused while drunk. I actually just recently had one of those conversations with my aunt. I had started this huge brawl at my cousin's funeral. My cousin passed a couple years ago. He was 29. And so like I just kept drinking and yeah, started this whole thing. And so now being out, they really give you the tools to look at your reactions and figure out what your part in everything is, and then to go back and you apologize for that. So like we would share with each other in the community like, hey, you made me really prideful. I'm sorry for my pride. Forgive me. So you develop that humility by doing that so much, to be able to look at what your part in things were. So in my transition back home and back kind of into the world, that was a huge part of making amends with, a lot of my family members, even some friends. And, it comes out in the community that I'm in now. It's different though, because they don't have the same practices, but obviously, the same kind of principles apply. And I find it just really freeing to be able to like share your pride and like look at your own wounds with things. So yeah, I would say it's still something I'm working on, because it can be difficult when you're the only one doing this. You know what I mean?
It's like not
other
just
people aren't.
reciprocated by every single person back at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And like there have been meetings we've had at work where I'll start out with like, I'm just really sorry for my pride.
Everyone's like,
in
yeah,
this,"
you
and
were
people are like,
prideful.
yeah. They're like, that's great, Nichole, that's great. And then they move on. And I'm like, okay, no one else. So
I thought we were going to start an apology circle here.
Yeah.
And there was like,
like,
right
at
again, I don't think I was going to do something.
but at Cenacolo, it would have been like
Well,
everyone
everybody.
would have said something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hi,
that's
I'm
been kind of an adjustment.
yeah. Hi, I'm prideful. I've been prideful for the last few days now. Yeah. Anyone else? No takers? That's your pride stopping you. But all right, I won't point fingers.
Exactly. So yeah, and then I have to just kind of deal with that. Like, okay, I'm not gonna stop doing what I'm doing though, So that's been kind of a fun little transition, and I don't
I'm
know,
sure
maybe God's using it.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm sure that that's like actually really great for people to see, though, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, there's plenty of times in my own life where like I will see somebody apologize for something or just admit something, and I'm like, wow, I wish I wasn't so vain and prideful, and that I could just be like, here's my crap, guys. Like,
Yeah,
and just do that. So that's really beautiful.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'm not perfect for sure. So there are definitely moments. I would say it comes out most at work where I'm like, "Ooh, I did not stay in silence. I did not take that feedback well,"
Mhm.
But it's, they're very merciful there. We all, we respect each other's journeys and we want to help each other still. So it was a great community to roll into after Cenacolo,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you see
Yeah.
yourself staying there for like the long haul as of right now?
Yeah, so I'm definitely serving another year. I would say I'm definitely serving another 2 years at the least. I just don't know. I've been really discerning kind of what my call is in life and what really, fulfills my heart. I have like such a pull to music and music ministry, but I never really developed in those things. I just, I was like writing my own songs back when I was deep in my darkness, so they're all super depressing and stuff. But yeah, so I've like picked up guitar recently and I'm just really praying about it. I don't know if I need that as a hobby or if that's something I want to pursue, but science is on my mind again as well. So it's just a big discernment process, because naturally the devil wants to use anything and everything to pull you away from something like ministry, So I definitely have plans for this next year to still serve, but kind of do some exploring. And, I've only been in Columbus, Ohio for a year now. So I really want to pay attention to like the young adult life there and kind of get involved in more things and just see what opportunities come my way,
Yeah.
Justin Fatika's wisdom was like, if that's the desire on your heart and that's your calling, then God will provide, and you got to trust that that providence can definitely come through the mission and through serving, just like whoever you meet, you tell them, yeah, actually, I want to be a biochemist one day. And then you never know what kind of connections you make from that. So yeah, it's something I'm praying about and discerning right now, but definitely the next few years,
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe some questions for you. I'm sure today, like, you still have, when's your sister's birthday?
January 27th.
So what is that like now for you when that day comes?
Yeah, really good question. Because there's, my brother's birthday, my sister's anniversary, my brother's anniversary. And to just speak even more into kind of part of my story that I haven't mentioned yet, I had a friend commit suicide my senior year of high school, a year after my sister passed. And then I've lost both grandmas at this point. And my cousin, who I mentioned kind of earlier, he was 29. That was about 2 or 3 years ago. So there's a lot of birthdays and anniversary dates. And my uncle also passed a year ago while I was in Cenacolo. So we've seen a handful of death here. So yeah, I think like one of the biggest parts of my healing, kind of what made it true for me, was God giving me the grace to understand that he has a kingdom and that he has heaven, and that's where we all want to get to. And that's where my brother and my sister are. And I just have this inner knowing. I have this full trust that that's where they are. And like I'm like excited about it, and like happy for them. Like I want to be there. Don't we all want to be there? You know what I mean? Like we aren't made for this world. We just have to live in it. And so I think kind of learning to understand that, and like, yeah, just like navigating Cenacolo and the formation they give you, you start to really see like there's a reason why your faith is so important, why your spiritual life is so important, because we're not made for this world. And so my siblings are lucky. They've gotten to graduate, they've made it to heaven. And so I have faith in the afterlife. I just really truly believe that that's where they are. And I think it was gaining that knowledge and that like inner understanding from God, the grace to understand to wrap my head around that, maybe as humanly as I can. It was through that I found the most true healing with my siblings' deaths. So yeah, I think I look at their birthdays and anniversaries now, if I remember, to be honest. My sister's birthday passed this January, and I didn't even remember. Someone reminded me, and I was like, that's healing, because I used to be all over social media and would have been shut down that day, and wouldn't have dealt with it well. But now I know where she is, and her birthday is, it's another day, but I can celebrate her life any day I want to. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That is.
Do you ever have like grief kind of hit you unexpectedly? Like, are there days that you're just kind of like maybe heavy about it?
Yeah, I would say it's different though. It's more of like, it's like grief happening in real time. It's not old or anything that's built up. I think God's really pulled that out of me, and I really suffered through a lot of that. But it's more of like, I found that as I go through certain transitions or just have like certain things hitting me in my present life that might be hard to navigate, I do have moments where I'm like, man, it'd be nice to have my sister to call to talk about this right now, and kind of just accepting that isn't what God's plan was, to have her here through that. And then, being like, no, I'd rather have her in heaven and not have to deal with this place. So
Yeah.
but I have mentors and other people to call. But yeah, moments like that for sure.
Okay.
Or, when we have like my sister's getting married in June. And so it's kind of like, okay, that's the first sibling wedding that, my brother and sister won't be at. So it's little moments in real time that can definitely bring up those, bouts of grief, I would say.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like you like hit in so many of these questions that we could go in some closing questions now.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. So, if your younger self from the darkest season could see you now, what do you think she would feel?
Relief. Yeah, relief. I think my darkest self thought that I was stuck forever, and that it was never going to get better, and that I was never going to get out of what I was doing. So to see it, there's like, I think it would have given me hope in that moment.
Beautiful.
Yeah. What do you hope people understand about grief that they often misunderstand?
That it looks different for everyone, and that like there's no right way to grieve. Yeah, just really that it's unique to the person and to the person's experience, and there's no timeline for it. I mean, you can sit there and study the four stages of grief, I think, when people don't even always follow that. And so, yeah, I think I would give the advice to people to just to like love people while they suffer through that, and in the ways that they're gonna suffer through that, and trust that like it's God's job to heal them.
Mm-hmm.
It looks different for everyone.
Yeah, with that, there's like a different question that I read on here, but was there ever a time like somebody was trying to like extend love to you that you were like feeling super shut off and like more hurt by them trying to be there, or like, turned off by it, like shutting out, or was it more like, thank God somebody's here right now to help me? Was there like probably a little bit of both?
Yeah, there's definitely both. I mean, I would say like the more that I wasn't facing my grief and the deeper I got into, my addictions and depression, anxiety, I didn't want to hear the truth. But sometimes it's just really hard to hear the truth. And the way to love someone is to still give them that truth, even though they're not going to want to be receptive to it. And so
Right.
at the time, I might not have been so thankful, but if it wasn't for those people, I might not be sitting here right now. So,
Right. Like maybe in the moment it was like shut up, like I don't want it.
yeah,
But like maybe what they
but
said now is like, oh yeah.
that was just my pride.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Totally.
just my pride. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
What has God taught you about humility through suffering?
good one. Oh man, he's taught me so much. Yeah, I think I would just say like humility through suffering is the only way. It's the only way. You can never get to true joy and true like spiritual peace without humility. Embracing your cross and going through the suffering is worth it. It's so worth it to find that humble space within you to do it. But I think he's also really shown me that like there's nothing to be afraid of. He's with me and I'm not alone. I'm not the only one out here that, has had to really find the humility to go through the suffering, to admit that I needed help, to ask for help and to go through that journey. And then now to even talk about it, because there's going to be people that judge, and that's part of the journey, but I'm free, So yeah, just that it's worth it, and that, I'm not doing it alone. Yeah.
What does patience mean to you now compared to before having lost your siblings?
I would say that patience it's absolutely essential. When we rush things or we want things instantly, it doesn't work, but two, it gets us into even more trouble. And I think now it's like I have a trust in God that with patience will come healing, it will come joy, will come the light, will come the fruit of suffering if I'm just a little patient, and he'll give me the patience if I ask him for it. So yeah, I didn't trust that before. I didn't trust that at all. That's why I wanted, such instant gratification and instant solutions that in the end don't end up, solving anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I do have one more question after this, but the last one we have written down is if someone listening today feels numb, angry, or hopeless, what do you want them to know?
I would want them to know that they're not alone, and just simply that there is hope. If God can pull me out of what he's pulled me out of, why wouldn't he do it for you?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of being open. I'm no more special than the next guy, If he can literally heal me from psychosis and pull me out of like several different drug addictions and help me develop a relationship with him, why can't he do that for somebody else?
Mhm.
Why can't he unnumb you? He can do anything. He is God. So yeah, I would just say there is hope.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who is in a place where humility feels like loss of control and patience feels impossible?
I would say your feelings are really valid. I know exactly what that's like. And to be real with you, humility kind of is a loss of control, maybe for a moment, but it's losing the control that you think is working to actually be free of that prison, to regain control in a way. But also, if you think you're in control, you're not. God is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say humility is figuring that out, is figuring out that even if you think you're in control, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And patience might feel impossible, but then that means you're not doing it with God. Everything is possible with God. And when you pray for patience, he'll build that for you. So he'll give you the opportunities to build the patience. So there will definitely be things that start to happen that make you impatient. But that's your opportunity to see that it is possible to be patient. But doing it with God. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. What would you say to someone who is currently experiencing deep loss or has, but is struggling to still move forward?
I would say to feel it all the way. Let it hurt, let it rip you apart. Pray through it, lean on the people you love through it, and deal with it the way that you have to deal with it, but don't give up. But it's when we stop trying to feel it that we get ourselves into trouble. Loss is like one of the hardest things that, you as a human might have to go through. But I really believe that God uses loss and grief and takes you on a journey with that so that you can find him, that you can build your relationship with him, and you can see that there is another side to it. So I would say, like, there will be a day where you will smile again and where it won't cut so deep, but to fully feel it.
It just makes me think of like when Lazarus died and like even Jesus cried.
Even Jesus cried. Exactly.
Like he felt the sorrow and he wept. Isn't that like the shortest quote in the Bible? He wept.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
and uniting that grief and that loss to Jesus, knowing that like he wept when Lazarus died, right? So he must understand. He must understand what that felt like in the heart,
Right.
So being able to unite that to Jesus and say, I gave you this. You're gonna get me through this. That's
Of somebody who knows for a fact he's with his father in heaven, and it was willed by his father for his death. He still wept.
Right.
Yeah. Bro, even Jesus cried.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
He did.
Yeah. But, also like there's a purpose in our suffering. Like God understands suffering and he allows it to happen because there's a purpose in it. And learning how to trust that is a whole different ballgame. Sometimes it takes going through the suffering to be able to see the purpose in it,
Right.
So
I think that's one of the most beautiful things though about having faith is that like we know there is purpose to suffering. It's not just like this meaningless pain. Like
you get to put meaning to it.
You can always put meaning to it. Even like the little impatiences that we have or like struggles of impatience, like we can still put purpose to like the annoying ingrown toenail or something like that. It's like this the smallest little thing that's like annoying. You can put purpose to that.
Right.
It's like
teaching you patience,
Right. Being able to offer those
but
things
it's like
up.
offering it up. It's like whether it's like something as small as that or like losing a sibling and like going through all that suffering. It's like there is purpose in
God uses
every
it.
ounce. Yeah.
And it's like you went through years of suffering and like darkness and look where he's brought you. And you don't even know what's like yet to come, which is like so incredible because you've been away for or back for like what, a year and a half, did you say?
Yeah. Well, Cenacolo was a year and a half and now I've been here for a year, so 2.5.
Right. So now you've come back. Look what God's already doing with you right now. And it's where is he going to take you? Like that's like an incredible thing to think about and be like, yeah, I have no idea. Because like, yeah, you have this desire for music and it's like the Lord could write amazing songs through you that just touch all these people's hearts.
It's exciting, honestly. Like that kind of unknown is really exciting. And then, it's also exciting because it's like, wow, I'm I'm not the only one out here that, you know, he's working through and healing and sending on a journey. We all are on our own journeys. So then that gets me excited for you guys too. Like, who knows? This podcast could become a TV show, and then, you know, the whole world's evangelized.
Right. You know, you never know. Well, because it's even just like the coincidence of talking about, how do you say it? Cenacolo? Is that how you say it?
Cenacolo?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Right. Yeah. For that one listener that
right.
needs it, you know,
The one that knows who they are.
Right. The one that knows who they are, which is actually what my last question is for you, is if there is actually somebody listening right now, whenever they are listening, who is like struggling, whether it's, you know, some type of addiction and like just feeling so lost in this dark place, and they're like hesitant to go, what would you say to the person who's just like, do I go, do I not go? Or they're just like, I'm desperate, Lord, what do I do?
I would say that the couple of years you might spend suffering and growing are worth it for the rest of your life. And that it's just it's worth it to save the rest of your life. Step into that call, and you know if you're being called somewhere. You know if you need to do something and that's on your heart, then that's probably where God is trying to bring you. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, it's hard, but if it'll save the rest of your life and break you free from this prison that you're in, then do it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So good.
So good. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on. Your story is just like incredible. I'm so grateful to have had you on and get to hear this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. You're awesome.
Oh,
This is
thank you.
awesome.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
this was great. Your story is very beautiful. And so, yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll definitely text you. I'm going to book a flight to Chicago right now.
Honestly,
Let's hang out.
let's do it. So
Get
funny.
coffee somewhere?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's do it. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. No, actually though. But if somebody's listening and they're like, where can I hear more, or like, can I like contact you or whatever, where can they find you?
Yeah, amazingnation.org. You can find the button that says support a missionary, or I'm sure you could search it on the website, and you can find my name, Nichole Pullano, and you can read my whole testimony. I think my email is on there. Yeah, or on Instagram, we're Your Amazing HN. You could follow us and, you know, DM me, and, you know, I'm open to talk to anybody, especially if you're discerning Cenacolo. Please reach out.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. We'll link all of that in the show notes for people. So,
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
yeah,
No,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, super grateful. So,
Yeah, me too, for real. This is a blessing. It's
Yeah.
always a blessing to be able to share your story and like remember where you came from and like the journey you've been on, you know? It's like, wow, I really did that. You did that.
yeah,
You know?
100%. Well, hopefully we talk to you soon. Yep.
Yeah. Until next time.
Yep. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
You guys are amazing.
You're
You
amazing. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wannabe Saints podcast.
If you have a question or topic you would like us to cover, reach out to us at wannabesaintspodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram at wannabe_saints.
You can find the link in our show notes.
Thanks for listening, and God bless.